Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today at ZeroNorth's launch broadcast for Propel. A few days ago, we launched Propel, our Agentic Maritime partner. The discussion that we'll have over the next 20 minutes will be an honest look of what we've built and the impact it will have on our industry. In 2020, we founded ZeroNorth on a belief that better operational decisions are good for business and also good for the environment. Propel is the next step in that evolution, built on the same belief. So with that, let's get started. So thank you for joining me today. We're going to kick it off actually by asking Anders Scholz, who's our COO, a question. If you can take a broad look at the industry and its challenges and opportunities, can you share a little bit with us about that today?
Of course, lots of challenges and opportunities as always. Freight never sleeps, that's a fact. So that means if you're an operator or a seafarer, you're constantly playing catch-up game, right? Just trying to stay on top of all the moving parts. Now, if you imagine a world where you have a set of agents that are helping you stay ahead of the game instead of just constantly playing catch-up, you can really, be on top of your game and on the forefront, which is super exciting. And that's what Propel is all about.
Good. Okay, thank you. And that's kind of the background in which we're having the discussion today. So let's go in and talk to Kåre Kellstrøm, who is our Chief Technology and Product Officer. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So let me talk a little bit about, there's a real shift happening in the industry and actually the world right now from a technology point of view. Can you tell me what Propel does and how that evolution of technology sets us up for this moment?
Yeah, so I think if you look back to 2022, the industry had this giant moment of ChatGPT coming out and this whole AI play has sort of started. And since then, we've gone from having chatbots that we can ask about stuff and get answers, very reactive, to having AI assistants that can help us do tasks that we still tell them to do and then they do it, to getting into this agentic space where agents are goal-driven. They know what we want and they respond to things in real time and then they act even if we're not at the screen. So that's sort of the shift that's coming now. We're going from a very reactive to a sort of a proactive stance with AI. And that's what Propel is all about. Propel never sleeps. It's always on and it always takes care of your business for you.
Okay. So, there's a lot of people who are launching things, even in our industry, that have a resemblance of chatbots. So is Propel a chatbot, or what's the difference between what Propel is and what a chatbot is?
Well, Propel is full-blown AI. So it actually encompasses all of it. It has the chatbot aspect, the assistant aspect, but it also has the agentic aspect in it. So with Propel, you can have your agents watch over your fleet of ships, while at the same time, if you want to understand what's going on, you can ask Propel, hey, what happened to this route? Why did it route like this? And then it will answer you just like a chatbot. Or it can also recommend things to you that you might not necessarily want it to do on its own. So we're thinking of this as ladders of autonomy. And we have we basically cover all of those ladders all the way up to semi-autonomous. The full autonomy, obviously, is where you give full control to the AI. At this point, we don't do that. We have human in the loop exactly where it matters at this point. But at someday in the future, who knows, maybe some of that will be handed off fully to an AI.
And Berit, actually, you and I had a conversation yesterday. This is Berit Graver, who's our VP of Engineering, Data, and AI. And you talked about this interface that you can have with it.
Yes. So the interface you can have with Propel is exactly this, that you can go all the way to it actually doing what the machine can confidently do, which means it generates a task and you pick it up as a human and you review it and then you interface with it. In that way, asking questions, you can say, why is this a better route than what I'm doing today? Which data are you using? What are the inputs, right? So you can inquire around the interface. And that's with natural language.
right?
Yes.
I guess that's the term people are using for talking to
So
your
if
computer.
we're putting it that way, then what actually happens is that before we had to create software for all of these flows, right? Having a custom waypoint or changing a market rate or whatever. Now you can just chat with it and you can ask questions, which I think the big game changer is this thing that before, if I wanted to know and compare two routes, I would have to basically go through a data scientist. And today I can just ask Propel and it will actually tell me what is the difference on key parameters, of course, within control.
Okay, so there's a chat function within it. And just so I can be clear, Kåre, I'll go back to you just for a second, because I want to truly understand what the step change here is now. Mm-hmm. And then we'll get to Anders, who will talk about what the impact is from our customer's point of view.
Well, the step change is that instead of just having this assistant, you can ask about things and then it acts or responds. You have an always-on system that continuously watches out for your interests, literally, right? So if some event happens in the real world, like a breakout of a war or a storm coming in, that's where with this particular ship, for instance, is being routed through the storm, the system will automatically pick that up, find out whether or not it makes sense to route around it, north or south or whatever makes sense, and then calculate the consequences and then surface that to the human and page the human and say, hey, a storm came up, I just rerouted it, these are the consequences. You have two options, which one do you want to take? So it's proactively working for you. You don't actually have to react on a signal that says, oh, storm came up, let me ask the chatbot what routes I can get. It does that already. So the step change is you get notified about things just like a proactive coworker would do, right? And then it escalates to you when it says this is outside of my pay grade. You now have to make
yes, exactly.
the call, right?
Yeah.
That's literally the change.
There is another step change exactly coming back to that around natural language, which is also, I think, the biggest game changer that we've also seen in software development is actually the integration, having agency over integration into different systems. So instead of me having to maneuver to a different software system like an email and actually picking what I got from my software tool for routing and then putting that in an email and sending it off to the captain, for example, then today you can do this within Propel, right? Yes. So when you've looked at this recommendation which the system has generated, you can interrogate it in natural language and you can also say, I'm good to send this to the captain. Can you please do that for me?
Right. Amazing. Okay. So then if we take it from the customer point of view, so as an operator, when you can't come in the morning, Propel has already been working before you log in. So how does this change for operator in their daily operations? Like in what kind of concrete terms does this impact our customers?
Yeah, good question. I think the $1 million question out there is like, okay, if I'm an operator or seafarer, am I still, in control in this new world? I'm an operator myself. I like to be in control. And so we've decided to Kåre and Berit's point in such a way that you are indeed, in control, right? You control, the rules for the game. You set out the rules and the goals for the agents. It's not that the agents will just go rogue and start hallucinate and, perform tasks that you haven't asked it to do, right? Which I think is key. But of course, there's going to be a lot of, trial and error in setting out those rules. But what's key is that you are in control as an operator and as a seafarer. Because safety comes first and you want to make sure that you are comfortable with what's going on and the tasks you delegate to those agents.
Okay, so it sounds quite complex. So I'm curious to ask Berit, how did you guys build this, or what makes us able to build something like this as ZeroNorth?
That's a super good question. So I think, we have both the right to play and the license to win because ZeroNorth is a tech-first company. And this means that it's founded on data and digital signals and exactly navigating operations from a digital perspective. This means we have a data foundation, which is, unlike many others, we've had both across fuel, vessels, and voyage, a huge part of the merchant fleet in our platform for years. And ZeroNorth is AI first. Because what actually has put us as a market-leading software company is AI. So we have market-leading fuel model prediction. coming from state-of-the-art machine learning and naval architecture principles. So coupling the actual domain knowledge to technology. And on top of that, we have built voyage optimization, which is highly flexible and customizable to our customers' need, allowing you to choose different strategies and input a lot of parameters and constraints, etc. So it's been really, really natural for us to lean into Gen AI. And I think a little bit to the point that you were making, Anders, I think when we started leaning into it, we were actually leaning into a perspective that we have operators internally in ZeroNorth, and we have a lot of software developers, which means that we ourselves had a lot of tasks that a machine could actually confidently do with Gen AI, which we were testing out. Is that actually true? Can we actually confidently do this manual thing with a machine? And we could. And we just wanted to bring that to our customers. That's really what happened. This huge transformation, it happened, I think, in Christmas this year. It feels like decades ago because this technology goes so fast. But already in January, Propel was there as a slide deck. The idea of bringing this transformation to our industry.
I think I want to add one thing to that, which is we've been doing this for 6 years now. We have products that support fuel, voyage, and vessel.
Exactly.
And those products have encoded maritime knowledge. So years and years of knowledge of how these processes actually function. We're building on top of that. We're not throwing that out. We're literally taking those services and those processes, and then we are using that with AI. So the AI is sort of the reasoning on top of a lot of deterministic systems that sit underneath and reason on very solid data, to your point, right? So we have the solid data foundation. We have the solid set of encoded services and processes. Yeah. And then on top, you have the AI that proactively reads events that happen in real time, acts with tools that are deterministic to route a ship in a very deterministic way, meaning that you can always, if you put the same parameters in, you always get the same result out. Yeah. Which is opposite of what AIs do, right? Because they are non-deterministic. You give it a question and sometimes it gives you one answer, sometimes it gives you another. So we are limiting also the amount of processing happening inside the AI to just the reasoning portion, right? The rest of it is the solid foundation we built for years.
Yeah, it's intent and orchestration and flexibility, right? Being super dynamic. And I have to say, we have really leaned on Anders' team because actually in the very beginning, what we did was also trying to help in your part, automating manual processes, co-creating with you. And our first customer shipment was internal. It was to Anders' team. And with them, we have really figured out, as you're saying, these things. There are some things where we can already today confidently hand over some of the jobs to be done for an operator to the machine, like checks being done, right? And we could not have done that without having our operations team so close to the development. It's been crucial to actually bringing about.
So that kind of brings me to this question of everyone's probably thinking, okay, how do I maintain control? And so maybe Kåre, you can talk about this. We have a terminology, maybe it's actually, I think it's industry worldwide kind of thing, human in the loop. So can you talk a little bit about how we help it, how we help our customers remain in control?
Yeah. So it is layered. The answer to that is layered, literally. That when we're building the software itself, we are limiting what the agents are allowed to do. So we are not giving them all the tools in the world, right? They're only getting access to the tools that they really need to do a certain task. So an agent is not an agent that does everything. We have literally many different small agents that are discrete in what they can do. So one agent might be, just concerned with the routes of one particular ship. That could be it, right? Another one might be me looking out for price changes in ports along a route or something like that. It could be, that's the kind of thing we do. And those agents, again, will only be allowed access to the specific things that they need to be able to access. Being human in the loop is really sort of the control lever. It's like, this is above my pay grade. Now I have to give it to the human. So we are encoding that logic also inside the agents. For every single workflow we look at, there is a certain set of points where you don't want the agent to just go ahead and make the decision. The reason could be that you may not have the full context as an agent. So for instance, let's say a storm comes up and you now have to route around it. Well, there might be multiple ways you can go, right? And actually making the call between those two routes might not be something that the agent has knowledge about. That knowledge may sit inside the customer's business or with the operator, because they know that, oh, by the way, if we go north, then we get way too far away from the route we want to take next, right? Which the agent knows nothing about. So there can be things where the context itself is limiting what the agent can do. And that's where humans in the loop come in, but it could also be high stakes things, like high stakes decisions, right? Suddenly the Strait of Hormuz is closed, for instance, right? We have ships coming into that area. What are we going to do, right? The agent can detect it. It can say, oh, probably not a good idea to route in there. I've looked at alternative routes around it. We have ships that have to go there. What do we do with those, right? It can't answer that question. But what it can do is it can surface the question to the human, who can then decide, oh, let's not go there. Let's go somewhere else, right?
Yes, and by human, you mean operators.
The operators, yeah, the person.
Everybody's using this term human today, right? Like, we're people, we're operators, we're, people who are using it. So let me ask you, though, because you talked about how there were some learnings already in, the usage that you were surprised about.
Yes. So back to your point, this is actually a really good segue, because what Kåre is talking about is also that you are able to actually instruct the agent, right? So it comes up and it says, hey, we are at a decision point. We need to do something. And then you can say, what does it look like if I avoid this high risk area? What does it look like? So you can do a lot of what if scenarios on the fly, just writing in natural language what you want to do. And as we've been rolling this out with Anders' team, the design is with the zero touch ladder. So we're trying.
Wait, what does that mean? Zero touch
so it means kind of like that we can have levels of autonomy. So there will be some aspects where you are confident handing something over to a machine, querying for data, for example, or something where you're not, kind of like you need to do it to perform your task, but it's not. You are okay to leave over the control. So the design is
like, tell me where all my vessels are, which ones, are going to need bunker now.
Yeah.
You can ask it that question.
Yes,
okay,
exactly.
Got it.
So the design is actually that there is autonomy, but the design is also that we start with you actually instructing with intent, and then maybe to the point where you get a recommendation. And then for some of those tasks, for example, the checks, we can do it automatically and say, hey, by the way, we checked all of these things that you might want to know, and here's the result. So if you think of it in that respect. And what was surprising when we started rolling it out was that exactly that point is where we have really co-created. There was actually a lot of these checks that we weren't aware of that the operators were doing, right? So when we started, they're like, yeah, but can you make, and then they were asking for traditional software development. Can you make me a view or a button which checks the AIS trail? For example, we're like, we can just have the agent do it up front. And they're like, oh, great, And so in that way, we've had a lot of really interesting conversations about exactly where you're actually super confident. I mean, it's just nice. You get a recommended route. And at the same time, the agent tells you, I checked this, I checked this, I checked this, I checked this. But then you can go in and say, yeah, but what if I want to do this? Then how does it look?
Exactly.
So in that way, you're in the loop.
No, exactly. And I think that's key, right? That's also shifting that mindset of like, oh, I need a button or I need a dashboard to, no, I just need an agent who can, perform the task, and I just, Q&A with it.
Super nice. So what's interesting is because you mentioned that we started thinking about this like Christmas or whatever.
Yes.
And so, of course, now we're, in August, 8 months later. And obviously, it takes time to build something that's transformational. So our triple layer, validation is really about engineering at the beginning.
Yes,
because we understand, what needs to be done, and then the second part is operationally tested. So making sure that what happens is tested in real world environments, operationally, for example, with the professional services. And now we're in this third phase, which is being approved by our partners. So maybe you can talk a little bit about, this this moment that we're in. We've, had our announcement launch. We have 3 leading fleets that are in our launch partners. So what's the opportunity for our launch partners?
Yeah, we wanted to make sure that we were super thorough in the way we went about, launching this. And that's also why we are leaning on some of our key customers, namely Cargill, Ultrabulk, and CMB Tech, that have been, on the ZeroNorth journey for a while, because we really value their input. They are very solid operators, and we really take, their feedback quite serious. So that means as, we are launching sort of the iterative steps of what Berit and Kåre are talking about, we're getting their input constantly. So we, make the agents better, day for day, instead of just sitting sort of in a vacuum and all of a sudden, boom, and then launching something that doesn't work. So that's very key, that not only are we sort of vetting and testing it internally with proper, quality assurance, but also getting input from, big customers that have been, on the ZeroNorth platform for long, because we believe that's a more sort of robust and credible way of launching something as big as this.
Yeah, super cool. So here's the question of the hour. How do we know it actually works?
Well, so all of this is really about outcomes. At the end of the day, what we're looking at is what is the net result of using software or humans to do a task, right? You are looking at the end result, and the result will always be vetted by humans in the end. So if we are having a ship routed by one way or the other, well, at the end of the day, you'll be able to retroactively look at what route was taken. You'll be able to inspect, did that make sense? You'll be able to ask the agent, because we can deep dive into the whys. Why was this decision taken at this point in time? So if you don't trust it, you can go in and ask, why on earth did you go north here when you should have gone south? Right? And then you'll get the answer. The answer might have been, well, the human operator actually decided that. I asked this question, right? Here is the transcript. So it'll be completely transparent on what happened. And you can go through all the steps all the way down to the very beginning, see all the inputs and see the net result. So you'll be able to basically evaluate that yourself in that basis. And then, of course, we also have higher order calculations on, how much fuel was consumed, what did we expect, these kind of things, where you can also dig into the numbers and try to understand what was the impact of this particular set of decisions that were made.
100%. And I'll add to that. I think Kåre's point, it's about outcomes, but it has to be the right outcomes, right? So quality over quantity. And in this case, I'll be looking to Cargill, Ultrabulk, and CMB Tech also to, pulse check them. Hey, are you seeing value from this? Because one thing is, metrics and outcomes, but what are the customers telling us? That's key.
Yeah. So I'm going to circle back a little bit on something that you guys have said, because now we're talking about outcomes.
Yes.
And so and we talked a little bit about data before, but one of the interesting things about the ZeroNorth kind of software over the past 6 years, and some other people might say, well, we've been in business for 20 years, but as a technology first company, we've been collecting outcomes. We've been collecting the decisions that were made when someone was sailing on the sea. And those outcomes and that learning keeps compounding to, we knew what happened. And so you've talked a lot, Kåre, about how this maritime knowledge is embedded in our software. And so how, not just any LLM can come out of the box and say, do this, do that. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? I think we have this really great white paper that, you've written, which people can download from our website.
Yeah, so I think we've seen these general purpose LLMs that can answer a lot of different questions about various things. They're, for instance, really great at coding. So they changed the surface of our trade here quite a bit. They also know a lot about a lot of other things, right? You can ask them about beer brewing and how to take care of your cat, right? All of these things that are public knowledge and public domain are things that they're great at because they've been trained on the internet, literally. The situation we are facing here is one of a lot of information actually has not been put on the internet about how you do shipping. That's not public knowledge. So what we've been doing is we've been building the processes I mentioned before based on interaction with our customers, understanding their business, understanding what it is that actually creates value for them and how they do various things and why. And that's the thing we've been building. And then as our system has executed, we have kept all of that information, and we are now using that as sort of the foundation for building the next layer, right? So we have all of the knowledge of the processes, but also how those processes were executed, which gives us I almost call it an unfair advantage, because we sit on that, just like it's an unfair advantage that we have our own internal set of experts that can test our software before we roll it out to our consumers. Yeah. These are some of the things that make us well positioned to actually win this.
Yes.
Like Berit was saying before.
Yeah. Okay. So let's be, we're wrapping up very soon, but let's be realistic and honest about where we are with the product. So let me know.
Yeah, I mean, we've been very focused on going for one workflow where we had both a lot of data and also had a lot of great domain knowledge and existing processes to actually test Propel. Remember, it's a learning experience. So first we need to validate with ourselves that this was actually the way to go. So there's one workflow now for voyage optimization, and there's a grand vision for all the things to come, which I believe is very feasible. But we are starting small, and we also want to have this validation with our customers before going broad and just, building a ton of things. We want to make sure exactly this observability platform, which is built in, it's built into the design, that we actually do data-driven product development and make sure that Propel delivers value for every workflow that we bring in there.
Yeah. Okay. So is there a sneak peek to what's coming?
I think yes. I think I want to add to what Berit said before we go there, because while it's true that in the first half we've been building around that one workflow, which is really the routing of the ships. At the same time, we have put the rest of our engineering organization into position. So they all know the framework now. How do you build agents and agentic software? They've been trained on that. And we have roadmaps now that are kicking off, which is about building into fuel and vessel performance as well, emissions. All of these other areas that we cover are also going to have agentic workflows being built in H2. So we are literally rolling.
And H2, you mean?
Of 2026.
Right. So right now, actually.
Right now.
I mean, how fast does this move?
But can I add to that? I mean, we did a hackathon exactly because there's been, like, for my team, there's been a dual obligation to bring this to customers, but at the same time, make sure that all of ZeroNorth can build on this platform easily in an agentic way. And we had a hackathon, and just 2 days, first hackathon I've done, also AI assisted in the software development part. And in 2 days, I mean, we actually produced pretty good POCs of, I think, around 25 workflows.
And POCs is a proof of concept.
It's just a proof of concept. So it's not production ready, but at least, we can prove that the whole engineering organization could build with it. And we were actually quite stoked with what came out of it.
Yeah, I saw many of those, and I was literally blown away at the different use cases that they were solving for, and that they were able to do that in 48 hours. So don't avoid the question. You said H2, like, when is this available to the market?
We're planning to have the first general availability in 2026 towards the end of the year. We haven't set a fixed date yet, but it's going to be there.
Okay, so this year, so a couple months. That's super exciting. Okay, I have one last question. So if we look a few years ahead, where does this take shipping? And maybe, Anders, we would start with you.
Yeah, I think short answer is we're only getting started, right? And this is moving, at an enormous pace, which I think is super exciting. So I don't have the answer, but I think the short answer is it'll take shipping, very far in terms of, what you can do with all these agents, right? Which also means that, our jobs will be more fun because we get to really, strategize, problem solve, think bigger than just performing repetitive tasks, right? So it's like the typewriter on 10x, if not 100 or 1000x steroids, right?
Right. Super cool. Okay. Kåre?
Yeah, I'll sort of echo that and then say in ZeroNorth, we are dealing with fuel, voyage, and vessel, right? These are the three main areas that we concern ourselves with. And up until this point of AI, we've been looking at these three areas as a sort of distinct set of processes that have been handled by our customers in various departments. So you have an operator department that routes the ship, and you have a bunker procurement department that makes sure you buy the fuel at the right quality in the right port at the right time, etc. what we're seeing now is that these areas that we are concerned about start to blend. So because of AI, we are able to take decisions on pricing changes into account when we route the ships in real time. So if you have a ship that's en route and you're planning to go on bunker in one port, and suddenly a price change shows up in another port that's on the route, an agent can pick that up, calculate what would it cost to go there. Is that actually a better deal? Would we still stay within charter party terms? And if so, surface it to the human, or even also surface, I looked at it, it's not a good idea, right? That kind of thing is starting to happen now. And we are introducing that, as well as sort of taking in events from the outside and all kinds of other things. So we start optimizing even more than we can today. Instead of optimizing in isolation, we are optimizing across for get even more gains, right? And in the end, the consequences of this, of course, will be reduced emissions, reduced cost, safer shipment.
Yes, exactly. I was thinking that being able to fully optimize for better outcomes, creating this sustainable trade that has all of the components of it, like environmental impact, commercial opportunity, and also operationally resilient in today's market. Berit?
Yeah, I mean, just to add to this, I think all the operators that I've seen or observed, they spend all of the time kind of like monitoring if everything is fine and trying to build plan Bs for potential problems that could occur on a voyage. And I think what we're really trying to do is going from that reactive monitoring and firefighting to actually being proactive in just supervising exactly these outcomes, right? So what Propel shows you is this is fine and this is not fine. You need to deal with this. So it really surfaces your work in a completely different way. And I believe for shipping, it will definitely free up better outcomes, and it will also reduce the handover tasks between departments, so you'll get a more holistic operation.
Yeah, I think the speed that you're going to be able to make decisions because you have everything in front of you will make a huge impact in it.
That's a very good point.
Okay, so that's it. Thanks everyone for joining us today. If you look on our website, you can actually reserve your spot. You can download a white paper. You can find out more about Propel. And we're so excited about what we're offering to the market in this launch and can't wait to progress and show you more about what's coming. So thanks so much. And thank you.
Thank you for having us.